Hello, and welcome to the second season of Let's Talk About Conflict. My name is Lynn Nash, and I'm your host. I am an attorney. I am a full-time mediator, and I do some teaching in the world of ADR. I take this very seriously. This is the world I love to be in. And the reason Let's Talk About Conflict exists is because I believe you should be skilled in having to deal with conflict when it comes your way. I didn't say you had to love it, but I want you to have some skills and I want you to not avoid. I know avoiding, can't avoid conflict. We're going to meet it head on. So, part of the point of this podcast is to give you some skills, to give you at least a little hope, I hope, when things come your way and you're not sure what to do. If you've listened to this podcast, hopefully a couple of these ideas should jar and you can take them to the bank. All of this is well researched and comes from a place of knowledge and education. So today we are starting a 5-part series on techniques that are going to help you if you find you're in a really difficult conversation, or you know you're going to go into negotiation and you're anxious about it, or frankly, if you're just having a good old one-on-one dispute with somebody else, your partner, your kids, your parents, your employer, your boss, and this is just life, right? Conflict happens. And so today we're starting a series based on a book called Getting Past No. And this is a brilliant book written by an incredible author, William Ury. He was originally trained as an anthropologist, right? So that's kind of cool. I mean, I think we'd all like to be anthropologists deep down. I want to go figure out why things went the way they did. And he ultimately believes in a win-win concept, and he should, because he is one of the authors of the seminal text, Getting to Yes. That book, Getting to Yes, if you haven't read it, yes, please go read it. This is kind of the book behind that years later, but Getting to Yes changed the dynamics of negotiation forever. It shifted the thinking in negotiation from being very positional and very aggressive and very dominant to an interest-based position, saying, what is really happening, and are we missing any of the points, and am I asking enough questions to get there? So not positional, interest-based. Reminder, here's kind of definition. Positional negotiation means the whole charade and the whole song and dance and game of a negotiation. It's just basically filled with posturing. And people in this mindset of positional negotiation, they pretend to be angry and they try to be intimidating and they use all these theatrics that probably have nothing to do with the negotiation or the problem that is the focus of the conversation. It's just a I win, you lose mentality. On the other hand, William Ury and Getting to Yes, and this book, Getting Past No, that we're going to talk about for the next few pods, is focused on an interest-based negotiation. What does that mean? It means focusing on what's really going on, not missing the emotional pieces or the human element pieces, and using joint problem solving to identify the problems that need to be solved without ignoring, back again, those people, emotions, or needs that could be driving an individual's decision-making process. Okay. Getting Past No, which we're going to talk about for the next 5 podcasts, is William Ury's book that was first published in 1991. It's got updates through the year. Through the years, it's definitely the book I think people need to read if they haven't. If they just need to pick one, this is the one I tell people. People are like, what do I really, if I just want to read one book about negotiation, I'm like, read this one. I think the skills are that good. And I think that William Ury is just brilliant. So with that, I will remind you, and I've said this several times in this podcast, it's not new. No, when you hear no, is an easy answer. It is harder to say yes and to give in and to follow through once you've said yes. So no is always an easy default answer. And the first no probably is the default rather than a full no. And that's where Ury's book, Getting Past No, really digs in. Okay. And that's why I think it's worth talking about for the next 5 pods. So let's get down to it. Today, pod number 1 in this series, we're going to talk about the first of 5 strategies that Ury identified in Getting Past No, his book. And these strategies are to help you, individual, control yourself and in how you approach these conflict situations where negotiation, give and take has to take place, and maybe help your opponent, I hate that word, but maybe help the person that your colleague on the other side of a negotiation that you're trying to figure out how to do this dance without being in the theatrics and all the aggression and the intimidation and that sort of thing. So in the book, Getting Past No, Ury identified 5 strategies to assist us as we work through that first no, working towards a joint yes, working from an I to a we. And I'm going to give you the 5 strategies. They are: don't react, go to the balcony. Aha, that's what we're going to talk about today. The second is don't argue, step to their side. The third is don't reject, reframe. The fourth, don't push, build them a golden bridge. I love the idea of that. And 5, don't escalate, use power to educate. And you know how I feel about education. So again, I think this is one of those core books. You need to read Getting to Yes. But once you have the foundation, Getting Past No is just chock full of brilliant things. And it is my pleasure to bring most of those to you through this podcast. So the first in the series, as I just told you, is don't react, go to the balcony. All right. If you've ever been to Verona, Italy, there is this little balcony that juts off a building, and they claim it's Juliet's balcony. I got to tell you, I don't have a Juliet balcony at my house or my office or out in public, wherever I'm potentially in a conflict situation. So why are we going to a balcony? Why is this balcony? Here's the point. The term go to the balcony is in essence a reminder to give yourself permission to slow down and not have an immediate reaction. Okay. Or once you're starting into a negotiation, to give yourself permission to stop and take a breath. That's all this go to the balcony, go to the fill in the blank. What does that mean to you? Ury says go to the balcony because I think it's a visual where you can picture yourself on any balcony anywhere in the world and enjoy the idea of I am now removed from where I was uncomfortable. All right. So that's why the term balcony, as far as I can tell, call it what you will. But remember, the first 2 words are don't react. So let's talk about that. Action provokes reaction. We all know that. This is pretty basic. I think we kind of learned that in middle school science. Action provokes reaction, and reaction provokes counter reaction. So I'm going to poke you, you're going to poke me, I'm going to poke you back, and we're in this loop. And sometimes it just makes people feel like they're in an attack mode because they're being attacked. So now I must go on the attack. This loop doesn't do anybody a favor. In fact, the reaction part of the loop causes anybody doing the reaction to become a part of the problem rather than working on the problem itself. Now, I know you've heard me say this before if you listen to this podcast, but in mediation, we talk a lot about being soft on the people, hard on the problem. And I really think Ury didn't write those words, but I think he would agree with those words really quickly. Again, even if someone is coming at you, you choose whether you turn around and attack. So remember, we are talking about don't react, go to the balcony. Okay, so let's talk about natural reactions. Ury identifies three natural reactions, easy for me to say, that people have when they find themselves in a difficult situation. They want to strike back, they want to give in, or they want to break off. All right, three natural reactions: striking back, giving in, or breaking off. Let's break this down a little bit further. Striking back, kind of just like it sounds. If you feel attacked, then you attack in return. This is an eye for an eye, and two can play that game, and I can be just as aggressive and hard to deal with as you are. It rarely, if ever, advances your immediate interests, what you need to do right now, and it may, quite likely, damage your long-term relationship if you have one, or cause there to be an inability to build a long-term relationship. All right. So in the striking back, you're really trying to win a battle, one little piece, only to lose the whole war. You might lose the whole war simply because of that reaction. Natural reaction. Not going to say I don't do it. Not going to say it's not instinctual to me. I'd never lie like that. But just know, striking back, one of the three natural reactions. Number two, giving in. Very natural reaction. All of us have done it at some point. You give in. You feel so attacked. You are so uncomfortable that you're just going to give in to get away from it and be done with it. Whatever you want to do. I'm not going to do this with you. This really matters to you. You just do it. It could stem from you don't want to drag out a negotiation. You don't want to drag out the uncomfortableness. To my conflict avoiders, this is, I think, you find yourself here a lot. I know you find yourself in striking back too because you're trying to end it quickly. But maybe it's also a feeling of, I don't want to look stupid because I asked some more questions. So I'm just going to give in and walk away and say, well, I tried, but they were difficult, or whatever it is they need to help in their group of people that they're representing, if it's a true negotiation. But people also give in because they feel intimidated. And that's that power dynamic of recognizing the attack for what it is and not allowing that to be a personal attack and shifting it back onto working on the problem. We're going to talk about that in a few podcasts. So if that's how you feel, hang on, we've got some advice. But also it may be a need, giving in may be a need to appease an unreasonable person. So this can come from family dynamics where you've been raised that your job is to appease no matter what, and it doesn't matter how unreasonable they are. That's just what you're supposed to do. But I got to tell you, it rarely works to get the best outcome. Appeasing tends to just build up a lot of frustration and animosity in the person doing the appeasing. So I'm not going to encourage you to do that. We're going to work on skills when conflict happens. And if you are someone and you recognize these patterns I'm talking about, have hope because we really are going to get there. Ury in the book talks about this old saying that I think might be one of the most brilliant things I've ever read. And if you find yourself as an appeaser, I want you to think about this quote. Ury says there's an old saying that says, quote, an appeaser is someone who believes that if you keep throwing steaks to a tiger, the tiger will eventually become a vegetarian. Is that even fit? Okay, let me say it again. An appeaser is someone who believes that if you keep throwing steaks to a tiger, the tiger will eventually become a vegetarian. It's not going to happen. But if you find yourself in that loop and you are throwing steaks to the tiger so the tiger will go away and you think they won't come back and ask for another steak, you're mistaken. So let's focus on some skills that give you a way to break this. Good segue into number 3, breaking off. Ury's term breaking off basically says, I'm going to end this relationship just to get away from this difficult person or this difficult organization or this difficult situation. Now, sometimes it's not a bad strategy and you should break off. there are people who are not good for you. There are situations that are not good for you. You're going to have to weigh that out. But I want you to think about it like this. If you look back after you've just heard me talk about breaking off and you think, yeah, I did it here and here and here and here and here. Yeah, then that's not just a situation. That's a you thing. And you are falling into this natural reaction. So if you're constantly being the one to leave, remember there is a cost, both financial in your pocketbook and emotional to your person by breaking off relationships just to get away from this uncomfortable feeling in a difficult situation. Okay. So, once again, 3 natural reactions: striking back, giving in, breaking off. All of this, if you're confronted with reacting and you're going to fall into one of these categories, very likely, because we all sort of do, just remember, if you slide into one of those over and over and over again, it's your default, and it's an unproductive cycle of action reaction, action reaction, action reaction. That eye for an eye thing means the whole world is going to go blind. Action reaction, giving in. I'm going to keep throwing you the steak just because you're going to become a vegetarian and stop asking me for steak. Yeah, probably never going to happen. And then again, that moment of breaking off, the cost to the individual who's constantly willing to break it away, no relationship, just completely start over and over and over and over and over. These aren't healthy. Now, they're instinctual and they tie to personalities a lot, but they're not healthy and they're not productive cycles. They're not productive ways of handling difficult things. So, this is where Ury would tell you, go to the balcony. Okay, we already talked about it. It's not, it's not Juliet's balcony in Verona. It's not a balcony off a conference room on the 86th floor. No, it is not a literal balcony. It is, however, permission, opportunity to step back away from this thing that's happening, take a breath, refocus, and attempt to see what you're dealing with in this situation objectively. Now, I use the word attempt to see objectively quite intentionally, because when you're ruffled and you're reactionary, it's very hard to slow down and put some objective planning around it. But that's what this is about, and that's why we study, and that's why we work on ourselves, because this is that internal conflict part that we have to work on to make sure we can do the external conflict interactions better. Now, going to the balcony means you're going to distance yourself from your natural impulses and emotions. Okay, now how do you do that? What does that look like? All right, I'm going to be very honest with you. For me, I am a trained attorney. I am a very type A personality. I know, shocking. But I'm real fast. I'm going to strike back. That is my natural go-to reaction. More times than not, I'm a little more aggressive. I'm like, step up to me, I'm going to step up to you. And I think a lot of lawyers kind of run that way. We're certainly kind of trained that way, but it's not helpful. That eye for an eye, making the world blind, it's not helpful. And so I know this, I've studied this, and when I feel that urge to just send that zinger right out of my mouth, I try to take a deep breath. Oxygen always helps. You need oxygen in your brain to make good decisions. Take a deep breath. You can slow down and take that breath. Count to 8 while you're breathing in. It seems ridiculous to talk about it, but if you try this, I promise you will feel a difference when the oxygen hits your body. And then determine, once you've got some oxygen in here, what is it I actually want to say? What is my motivation for that statement? And then determine, is it actually the best course of action right here, right now? Now, this can happen in seconds or milliseconds. You don't need minutes on the whole thing, but recognizing within yourself, a pause is necessary before you just have that reaction, is one of the best ways you help yourself feel in control of a situation when things do not appear to be in control, or things were not where you thought they were going, or something has happened and things have changed. Okay. If you can learn the skill of slowing yourself down from the immediate reaction and giving yourself time to think through the situation, you are going to, at minimum, if nothing else goes right, at minimum, know that once you choose to respond, you're doing it from a logical, calm place versus that reaction. Okay. You need to think through a few moments in those seconds of your taking in that deep breath and counting to 8 and letting your brain be on fire a little bit. I mean, my brain goes on fire, so I use that term. Maybe everybody else's is just a whole different experience. I don't know. But I ask myself the next two questions every time. Am I falling prey to things I know set me off? And I got to tell you, I'm going to be very, 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 very open with you. I detest feeling disrespected. It is sort of a big fault line for me. And so when I feel like somebody is kind of twisting the knife and disrespecting me in some way, it is knee jerk for me to come at, that makes me want to step up and strike back and tell them just exactly how it's not going to be helpful. So that's one of the things I know I have to run through my little brain on fire filter of, why do you want to react to this? Are you tapping into some of the things set you off? Okay. Very likely it is. And so take that out and now look at it again, right? You're filtering out some things to filter out so that you can focus and get to a place of being successful and logical and not knee-jerk reacting. The second question that I try and ask myself in those 8 seconds of breathing is, am I losing my ability to think creatively towards what might be possible? Okay. No. No is the easy answer. My children will tell you. I am quick to tell them no because I used to say maybe, and then they couldn't take maybe because maybe just means, hey, you're going to say yes later. And it's like, actually, maybe probably means no. And so instead of saying maybe, I say no. But no is the easy answer. We talked about this. No is the easiest answer. So you're having that internal conflict to say, am I falling prey to my own problems? So let's clear that out first. And then 2, am I engaging or about to engage, if I don't control myself, in a way that is negative and not creative? And it is a stopping point instead of a growing point. That is the goal in going to the balcony. That is the goal in giving your brain and your mouth a pause. Okay. So when I think about Ury's don't react, it's not an opportunity to disengage and ignore. Yes, to my conflict avoiders, no permission to ignore. Rather, I want you to see it as an opportunity you are gifting yourself. When I can go through those millisecond questions and say, hey, brain, let's talk about this for a second. I'm going to be able to stay focused on what my goals are in a conversation that's difficult, in a negotiation that matters, and we've got to get something done and we're on limited time or budget or whatever it is, because everybody is. I'm going to stay focused on what my goals are. And I've planned and I've prepared, out in the wilds in a negotiation, you may not be able to have all the information. My buddy, Peter Riley, who teaches at Texas A&M School of Law would say, now, Lynn, you can't always, and he's right. I'm not arguing that point. But as much as you can, you're prepared. And these are skills. This knowing you can take yourself to the balcony is part of being prepared. And so I give myself that opportunity to remain focused on what I need to get done, who I want to be, why I think this is the right next move. And then I give myself the gift of not being a knee-jerk reactor, of not having that moment of striking back, of not having that moment of just giving in. Sometimes I mean, we all strike back, give in, and break off periodically for different reasons. We're faced with different situations. No one is going to tell you these are never things you should do. However, if you find you know what your pattern is, and I know what mine is, I'm going to have to slow down and think about it and not have that knee jerk reaction because I want to have the ability to continue relationship when I have conflict with someone else. I understand relational is going to help me work through it versus an aggressive response. That's my knee jerk. I am very rarely going to give in. That's just the truth. And I'm really rarely going to break off. I have given in and I have broken off. I know I can think of several situations where that was true for me. But if we're talking about that moment, that knee jerk reaction, I am far more likely to just spout out something. And I've had to learn using these skills and train myself to slow down and think. Am I falling prey to my own problems? I.e., I don't like being disrespected. Am I losing this ability to work on the problem? Am I not focusing on the problem and instead I'm focusing on the person because I feel attacked? Slow down, give yourself balcony time, and know that if you can stay in the conversation and not just have those three reactions naturally, you are far more likely to end with a result that everybody involved can be pleased with, as much as possible, but pleased with. So that is the content I have for you today. I will say again, this is Let's Talk About Conflict because we're not conflict avoiders. And we're going to work on our own base instincts and not be those knee-jerk reactors. Whichever knee jerk you tend to go to, you know who you are. I'm not going to tell you. I know who I am. I shared it. And we're going to talk about getting the techniques and getting past no for the next 4 episodes beyond this one. So if you've enjoyed the content for today, the very best thing you can do for this podcast is tell someone else and encourage them to listen. The other thing I will always encourage listeners to do is send us a message. We've got a website out there with the same name. We've got an Instagram with the same name. Send us a message and say, man, I really found that useful and here's something I did. Or send us a message and say, no, I don't think that was the right choice. Whatever, it's good. We want feedback. Also, always interested to hear what you're interested in hearing about so that this podcast is a reflection of its audience and not just Lynn. I can teach on all kinds of things, and if I know something about it, well, I'll work something up for you. All right. So with that, getting past no, 1 of 5, you have now heard it. The next episodes are coming up, so look forward to hearing your responses to that. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you down the road.